Welcome to this first episode of Perviz's Trade. My name is Perviz, if you haven't figured that out yet. And basically, for this first episode, we'll talk a little bit about the world economics, how the world works, how money moves, how you can make profit of this trade. We'll get a bit into details about my background, and yeah, we'll take it from there. We'll talk about the New World Order and how you can make money from this changing world order. So, a little bit about me. I have a background in engineering, chemical, from a place called Calgary. It's in Alberta, Canada. And I went to University of Calgary. I did my chemical engineering degree there. Then I worked as a trader, power trader. So we were trading financial instruments of electricity in the liberalized power market in Alberta. And I was a good trader, but left that job because I just got tired of it, really. At one point, I burned out and I realized I was better off without the job. And but that job and working the working in the power markets and also interacting with people from the finance industry, I learned a lot about how the world works. And I just want to share what I think the world will look like in a few years, how your finances will change, and how you can make money. So let's get right into it. So first thing first, I've been doing trading for a long time from a young age, and I traded with my dad as well. I worked as a trader. So when I make money from trading, well, a lot of people make money using different combinations of stats. They use charts and all these statistical indicators, and they try to make money from that. Quick trading, but most of the money I made in my job as trader, I made by basically predicting the future. So you want to predict the economics of certain regions, and you want to make bet on those predictions, and that's why the best traders in the world are usually good economists, whether it's George Soros and how he predicted the fall of the pound in the 90s, anyone else for that matter. If you want to be a good trader, you have to understand world economics, and that's where the big bets are. You can make money by doing trading using statistical indicators and all that, but if you want to make the big money in trading, you have to make it using bets on future world econs. So on this first episode, I didn't want to get too much into details, but I just wanted to talk about the recent election of Mr. Trump in the US, if you haven't followed that yet, and what the implications of that are going to be in the next few months. If you haven't followed world econs, world politics lately, China's rising. Russia's war in Ukraine will likely end sooner than later, but the war in the Middle East might not end anytime soon. And this new global world order that's coming with the rise of the Eastern world and the decline of the Western world, it's coinciding at the critical point. And if you look through history at this kind of the decline of an empire and the rise of a rival empire, usually that's where conflicts begin. Because the current empire never gives up their power or gives up their status without a fight. And the rising empire has to prove their worth also through a fight. So When we talk about the BRICS, people talk about how the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and a few other nations that recently joined. People talk about how they will create their own currency that will challenge the US dollar and how that will lead to the downfall of the US dollar. And I partly agree to it, but not entirely. So, first of all, if you haven't already, Ray Dalio has made an interesting video on the indicators that show the rise and decline of an empire. And one of the latest or one of the last stages of an empire is related to its financial industry and status as a its currency status as a global reserve currency. So you have education, military, technology, science, innovation, those all decline beforehand. And the last two indicators that decline in the final stages of the empire are its financial industry and the reserve status of its currency. So, in that sense, the dollar doesn't have much leg to stand on going forward. That's very true. And the new appointment by Mr. Trump, the new Treasury Secretary, Mr. Scott, I believe he's a hedge fund manager. He wants to basically, he's a pro-tariff guy. He wants to decrease the value of the dollar to make the exports cheaper. He wants to make US a manufacturing house and not an importer. And so his plans and Mr. Trump's plans will likely accelerate that process of the downfall of the dollar. And what that will end up doing is making the dollar extremely volatile in the short run. And thus, people will stop using it as a reserve currency because the fundamental aspect of a reserve currency is that it is a good store of wealth. It doesn't fluctuate too much, and you can use it as a means of trade because the value doesn't fluctuate too much on a day-to-day basis. But the plans of Mr. Trump to impose all these tariffs and the plan of the new US Treasury Secretary to basically lower the interest rate and make the dollar less valuable so that the exports become cheaper and USA can export more. That will basically make the dollar less uh, visible as a reserve currency for other countries. And we can also see the move gold is has been on the rise, and people are keeping gold more and more as part of their reserves, and they're diversifying away from the dollar. And this move by Mr. Trump and the Treasury Secretary, Mr. Scott, will just accelerate the process. That's one thing. The dollar will diminish in value in the next few months, even though it did rally a bit initially it rallied after Mr. Trump won on November 6th. But my prediction is, that's my first prediction, that US dollar will drop significantly in value against all major currencies in the next 6 to 12 months. And well, the other thing is cryptocurrency adoption is going to increase because the new US administration is pro crypto. They're going to have a new SEC head who's pro crypto, who wants to make crypto legal tender, I believe, or at least a registered by a fiduciary instrument that's backed by the US Treasury. And so just basically legitimate, making it a legal tender of wealth or currency will basically accelerate the process of the downfall of the dollar because people will buy cryptos and usually using dollar, and so crypto adoption will increase. So expect a crypto rally in the next 8 to 12 months. That's my second prediction. And my third prediction is The Russia-Ukraine war, people are expecting Mr. Trump to come into office on January 20 and get a peace deal settled in. And as much as Trump has a good relation with Putin, and that might happen, but you also have to keep in mind that the Eastern countries, China, Russia, they already know that the West is not going to give up their power status, their superpower status without a fight, and they're going to keep bullying and bullying. So there might be a temporary ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine, but the bigger war of the East versus the West is definitely not over. And this is where BRICS comes in, because I think BRICS is going to be more than just a new currency to dominate the Western currencies. I think it's going to dominate the Western financial capital markets. And so, yeah, when the Dutch were superpower, Amsterdam was the center of the global capital. London was during British time, and obviously New York is right now. And people are talking about how Shanghai and Hong Kong is going to be the next financial centers. And that might well be the case, but I think the next financial center that will dominate global capital flow and global capital allocation, raising capitals for new projects, I think that'll be BRICS because the growths are all in the developing countries and all the projects of these developing countries are being financed by BRICS. And so the majority of capital will have to eventually flow through BRICS. And that will make BRICS a real challenger to Wall Street. And how fast that will happen, that's a matter of time. We'll see. But I think BRICS will be more than just a currency. I think it will dominate global capital allocation and it will dominate Wall Street. And really, what when people talk about inflation in Western countries, especially, they talk about how there was inflation in the 1970s and how they fixed that issue and they'll fix this issue again. And it's the temporary issue. I disagree because the total debt of US and the other Western countries in the 1980s, 1970s was well below than what it is right now. And like for example, this year USA paid $1 trillion in just interest on their debts. And I think what people fail to understand is raising the interest rate works when your country doesn't have too much debt. So, yeah, in the simplest sense, the total money supply of a currency is equal to the total debt issued in that currency. So, like for example, USA right now has 36, $37 trillion in debt, I believe. And so there should be at least $37 trillion of US dollars in circulation because currency is basically debt. It's a fiat currency. It's not backed by any gold or anything. So when you issue a currency, you're issuing debt and basic balance, basic accounting, the assets and the liabilities have to balance. So all the circulation money, it will have to balance all the debt issued in that circulation, in that currency. So basically, as this interest payment on this massive debt increases due to the high interest rates of the West, the currency supply is actually increasing. People think because the interest rates are high, the currency inflation's going down. Well, it is going down in the shorter run because you're basically forcing people not to spend money, right? Because the borrowing cost is so high and you're forcing businesses not to expand. You're forcing people not to take out credits to spend money. So, of course, in the short run, you're bringing inflation down. That's obvious. But you're on the in the long run, inflation is going to get back up. My prediction is inflation in the Western countries will increase in the next few years, and they will increase rapidly. I can't give exact time details, but this video has been made on November 25th, 2024. You can come back to it if you want. My prediction is in the next few years, inflation will pick up again, and the central banks will basically have to raise the interest rate again. But I think this back and forth raising and dropping interest rate will not work this time like it worked in the 80s, simply because the debt obligations are too big. So the interest on those debt obligations are too big. And when you have such high exponential increasing interest obligations, not the actual debt, but the interest obligations, you're increasing the currency in supply exponentially, and your economy is not growing or catching up to that increase in currency supply. Like UK, Europe, they have GDP growth of less than 1% this year. USA is still working. I mean, it's like 2 or 3%, but because the rate at which interest rates are rising, because of the high interest rates, you have high interest payments on this massive, ever increasing debt. So the currency supply, in circulation is increasing exponentially. And the GDP, the production to match this increase in currency supply, that production is not increasing exponentially, it's barely increasing. Most of Western countries are stagnating, they're barely growing. You have more currency in circulation, and you have almost the same amount of GDP, amount of production in circulation, and basically more of it's a basic supply and demand that will lead to increase in prices. Whether consumers spend more or less more doesn't matter. If your currency circulation is increasing exponentially and your GDP is not growing, doesn't matter how much you decrease or increase the interest rate, doesn't matter how much the consumer spend, and the currency will be devalued, and you will see massive hyperinflation very, very soon in Western countries in the next few years. And what you will see as a result of that is basically a extreme shift to the far right. And that's basically what brought Hitler into power in the Second World War. And that kind of fascist governments usually come into power by exploiting this fundamental economic flaws, and that basically impacts everyone or at every aspect of the society. Because when your basic needs like the eggs you buy, the milk you buy, when those prices are increasing 50% every 2 weeks, you don't really care about your ideologies. You just want to feed your family, and so at that point, that's where these far right fringe parties get a lot of popularity, and they come into power, and that usually leads into a lot of conflicts. So I think the next phase of the Western countries, they're not going to decline without a fight. They'll basically elect these far right French leaders like Mr. Trump, Mr. Farage in UK, and this pattern will continue as the currency gets devalued and inflation will pick up again. And it doesn't matter how bad these people are, how bad these leaders are, they'll exploit these flaws and they'll get elected. And that will be the end. Once your currency is massively devalued, it will not be used as a global reserve currency. And once the global capital allocation moves into the BRICS, into the World Development Funds of the BRICS and all these other mechanisms that BRICS has, The last two indicators of the decline of an empire are basically complete. You don't have a reserve currency, you don't have the status as a major global financial center, and that's basically the end of the Western Empire. They'll probably do engage in some conflicts before they give up completely, but they have their debt obligations to, so obviously when they can't pay their debt and they don't want to tax their people, they basically monetize their debt, which basically means printing money, which basically makes the debt worthless, right? So if you have $100 in circulation and you have $10 in debt, but now you, instead of raising $10 from the citizens, you're printing $10 to repay your creditor, then you're basically reducing the value of each of the dollar that you're giving back. So the creditor will stop lending you money because the $10 he initially gave you were worth more than the $10 you gave back because you just printed them. So that's basically the fundamental idea behind monetizing debt. So, the times are changing. There's a lot of changes that are going to happen in the next few years. People keep telling me you shouldn't bet against the West. I think this is just a basic rule of nature that if you look through history, no empires lasted forever. Empires rise and empires will fall. And this is just a basic force of nature. And once the US dollar stops being a global reserve currency, that will basically lead to a lot of developing countries and a lot of Eastern countries basically saying, why should we listen to you? Basically saying to USA that why should we listen to you regarding anything? And the US will basically say, well, we have an army and we're powerful. And, that's where usually conflicts begin because when you can't get your point across, get your objectives completed using your reserve currency because it's no longer there, the only other way people will listen to you around the world is using a military. And that's where the wars will begin. But so there will be a lot of transition periods, a lot of conflicts coming in the next few years. And I don't want people to think that because Trump is elected, everything will be fine, because I do not think it will be fine. And I think the decline of the West and this new world order will bring a lot of crazy money making trading opportunities. We'll get into more details about that in the next few episodes. So, for this first episode, I just want to give you guys a picture of where the world's at and where we're heading. We're heading towards a lot of conflicts, a major shift in basically superpower status, which countries will hold it and which countries will lose it. Major shift in currencies in the Forex market, major shift in the crypto market, and major shift in which stock markets will receive the most FDI, foreign direct investments, capital flows, basically. So a lot of changes are coming in the next few years. And so for this first episode, I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what this channel is about, what I want to talk about. And I know what I'm talking about because I made money and the predictions I'll give in my episodes. You can look back at these episodes in the future and basically hold me accountable if my predictions don't come true. So you don't have to look at my credentials or my experience or the money I make. And basically hear my predictions, wait in the future, come back, look at these videos, and then you can see whether my predictions were accurate and whether I know what I'm talking about. I'm pretty confident I know what I'm talking about. I think the rise of the East and the rise and the decline of the West has reached a critical point, and there is a lot of money to make from this. And I know trading is becoming a big deal in a lot of developing countries. A lot of traders in the West as well. People want to make money in trading. It's fun, but it's risky, and the big money that's made in trades are not usually made using statistical analysis. It's usually made by betting on this kind of future economic predictions. Uh, so please, if you like this episode, subscribe to my channel, like this video, stay up to date, hit that alarm bell, and yeah, I look forward to the next episode, and we'll get into details about the recent events and how you can make money from them. So that's it.